Hey guys, how's it going? So as you're watching this, I am somewhere in Michigan enjoying vacation, but I hope you guys are having a good week as well. So we're going to be in our books again. If you could turn to page 18, that's where we're going to start today. Page 18. And as you guys turn there, so the past 2 weeks, we have been talking about worship and a lot more personal style of worship. We've been telling ourselves and seeing how we can worship throughout our day to day, and we've been talking about worship as more than a Sunday thing. Today, we're going to be specifically talking about worship services. So we're going to switch gears a little bit and really focus on the worship service and how we can make worship services more meaningful to us as we come every Sunday morning, Sunday night. So that's going to be our focus today. And if you have Bibles, we're going to be in Isaiah chapter 6. Some of the verses are in the book, but not all of them. So you can turn to Isaiah chapter 6. We're going to be in verses 1 through 8 there. All right, so I want to start off with a question. What makes a worship service meaningful to you? We've gone to some services that have just been great. Maybe the music was great, the sermon was great. We just felt really, really impacted, and it caused some kind of a change in us. We've also been to some worship services that maybe we felt were lacking. Maybe we fell asleep, we had a hard time paying attention, and really we felt like we didn't benefit from the service all that much. I want you to think about the good worship service for a second. Maybe think of a specific time where you were really blessed in church. And I want you to think about, how was your attitude going into church that day? Did you sleep, get a good amount of sleep? Was things in your life going pretty okay? So what were the things around the circumstance? Was the music great? Was the sermon great? What was it? Now I want you to think about maybe a service that you felt was lacking. And how was your attitude that day? Did you get enough sleep the night before? Were you able to pay attention? Was it maybe songs you didn't like so much, or a sermon maybe you just didn't felt applied to you enough? 90% of the time, as we as Christians go into a church service, our experience is based on our attitude going into the service. Growing up, you guys know I do a lot of musical things, and I was a worship leader for a little bit for a smaller church. And during that time, whenever I would go to other church services or hear other bands play, oftentimes instead of worshiping God when they were performing as a team, instead of worshiping God and looking at the words and really reflecting, I would focus on the music. And when I would hear them mess up, it would bother me. Or when I was like, oh, they could have probably did that a little better, it would bother me. And that's what my main focus would be on. And there would even be times where I was leading worship where I was way more focused on the musical things instead of the worship. And so I was really missing out on a blessing. I was missing out on what God had for me because I was way too focused on a technical side of things instead of worshiping God, putting God as the priority in the worship service. Our goal should be to put God at the center of every worship service. And when we have a good attitude going into the service, when our perspective is all right, then the worship service will benefit us and help us connect with God on a much deeper level. I want to read you guys this quote here on page 18. It says, during my personal time of worship, I can use whatever music I enjoy. But during corporate worship, I must never allow the style or my dislike of it to prevent me from worshiping. If I can't put aside my preferences during worship, then I am not worshiping God, I am worshiping myself. Guys, this is key as we go into worship, and it's a key to know that it's not about ourselves or our preferences, but it is all about God and worshiping Him, and if the words are true, if the sermon is true, and if it's reflecting Him, because we can always gain from that. All right, so today we're going to look at two key elements to helping us have a better worship experience. So the first one, and that's your first blank on your page, it is a right perspective of God. In order to have a meaningful worship experience, we need to have a right perspective of God. A right perspective of God. Have you ever encountered something that made you feel small? Have you ever looked up at the sky when it was a very clear night and it's kind of made you feel small because you realize how big everything out there is? Have you ever, this happened to me, I've been on the ocean and you realize that you could just get swallowed up in an instant and you feel kind of insignificant? Or been on top of a mountain and you see the mountain range and realize that, man, God is wonderful. He created all these amazing things. And I'm really a small thing in comparison to everything that God has made. God is huge. God has created everything that we see. And oftentimes we forget that when we come to church on Sunday mornings, youth group on Sunday nights, when we pray to God in our personal time, when we do our devotions, that we're going before that God, the same God who had made everything, who holds the universe in his hand. That's the God that we're before. And we forget to take it seriously. We forget that we're worshiping a God that is that big, a God that is that awesome. We tend to be arrogant until we encounter something powerful. We tend to think that, we're the stuff, we're the coolest, we're the biggest, we're the baddest, until that big stuff gives us perspective on how small we really are, how little we really are. So when we come before God, we need to be humble before him. Isaiah chapter 6, 1 through 8, this is the verse for us. I'll read that for you all. In the year that King Uzziah died, I saw the Lord seated on a high and lofty throne, and his robe filled the temple. Seraphim who were standing above him, each one had 6 wings. With 2 he covered his face, with 2 he covered his feet, and with 2 he flew. And one called to another, Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. His glory fills the whole earth. The foundations of the doorways shook at the sound of their voices, and the temple was filled with smoke. Then I said, Woe is me, for I am ruined, because I am a man of unclean lips, and live among the people of unclean lips, and because my eyes have seen the King, the Lord of hosts. Then one of the seraphim flew to me, and in his hand was a glowing coal that he had taken from the altar with tongs. He touched my mouth with it and said, Now that this has touched your lips, your wickedness is removed, and your sin atoned for. Then I heard the voice of the Lord saying, Who should I send? Who will go for us? And I said, Here I am, send me. So guys, here we see that Isaiah was put before God, and he was put in his perspective. And we're going to talk about that a little more. As you guys see, there's a little acrostic here. I want you guys, when you guys go into your groups, to go ahead and fill that out as a group. You could read the instructions for that. But we're going to move on to point number 2. Point number 2 is that we need to have a right perspective of ourselves in order to have a truly beneficial worship experience. So the first one was a right perspective of God. The second one is a right perspective of ourselves. We need to have a right perspective of ourselves. You guys can turn the page. So you see that little T-shirt thing. We're gonna skip that, but it pretty much asks for us to come up with slogans for ourselves and for our world. And I took the liberty to do it because I think our world's slogan is pretty easy to see. I think if we had one phrase that defined the culture, it would say, it's all about me. It's all about me. And that's because as a culture, we're pretty self-centered. We see how we can get on top, how we can improve the most, even if it's at the cost of others. Overall, it's about us. It's self-important. We look to see how we can have more popularity, have more fame, have more money, all of that stuff. But I want to tell you that when we're self-centered, that destroys worship. Self-centeredness and pride just obliterates any chance we have at worship. I want to go back to Isaiah chapter 6, verse 5. And it says, Then I said, Woe is me, for I am ruined, because I am a man of unclean lips, and I live among a people of unclean lips. And because my eyes have seen the King, the Lord of hosts. All right, down below on the page, there's a definition of ruin. I'm going to read that. Ruined is damaged beyond repair, bankrupt, devastate, wrecked, to make undone. Now let's read this verse, Isaiah 6:5, one more time. Then I said, Woe is me, for I am ruined, because I am a man of unclean lips. I live among a people of unclean lips, and because my eyes have seen the King, the Lord of hosts. So Isaiah saw God, and that put him in the correct perspective of himself. He said, I'm ruined. He realized that he was a sinner living with sinners, and that he was in no way worthy to be before God. And that that caused his perspective. He realized the sin that was causing a barrier between him and God, the sin that was affecting him. And he realized how unworthy he was to have a relationship with God. But still, God wanted to have this relationship with him. So when we come before God, we need to remember that we have no right to be before God other than the fact that God wanted to have a relationship with us, that God wanted us to be there with him and to be able to talk with him. And because of the sacrifice of Christ, we are now seen as 100% pure before God as long as we have accepted the message of salvation. So as we live and as we go to services and as we do our quiet times and pray, it's important to know that perspective is key, that we have the right perspective of God, that he is holy, that he is awesome, and that he is great, and that if his word is preached and if everything's biblical, we can gain something from that. It's key to know that, and it's key to know that, it's not all about us. It should really all be about God. And one more thing I wanted to mention as we kind of wrap up. Oftentimes when we go to church, we come, we might not know it, but a lot of times we come with an attitude of, how is the church, how is the service, how is it going to benefit me? And that kind of shows and reflects the culture that I said we have. We focus on ourselves when we come to church. When really, church should be about, how can I contribute to the community? Any community should be set up that way, but especially a church. We need to say, how can I make the church a better place? How can I contribute to the worship that the church is doing? How can I use my talents and my abilities to honor and glorify God and to help bring others into and give them the ability to honor and glorify God? So if you're talented with music, how can I use music to help people glorify God and just enhance the worship experience? If you're a good teacher, a good speaker, a good encourager, how can I use that to benefit the church? So we should really be asking ourselves that question every Sunday morning when we go to church. How can I make church better? How can I make the worship experience better for myself and for other people? How can I serve? When we come to Sunday nights, how can I make youth group better? How can I serve? How can I enhance the experience? We should always step up, take advantage of the opportunities given to us, and see how we can contribute to the community that is the church. Because it's not about us. We should be able to bless other people. And when we do bless other people, we'll see that we'll be blessed as well. So as we wrap up, I want you guys to take a minute. On page 21, there is a little evaluation there. Just take some time, take a minute or two to pray about that and see and kind of rate yourself on, how you're doing in worship, maybe how you can improve, how you can maybe tighten up your focus. And then after that, you can go into your groups and talk about that. A couple last things. So today, I want you to take the books home with you, and we will do there's 2 more lessons in here. We'll do these online. I'll post a video like you guys are watching right now to the Facebook page, to the Instagram page, and you could kind of go through it with me because next week we have our Parents versus Teens, so make sure you guys sign up for that. The link is online. You should have it, but if you don't have your parents not able to come for some reason, we can adopt you and you'll be a part of the challenge. You'll be included. So make sure you all come to that, but we won't be having normal Bible study next week because of that. And then the week after that, August 2nd, is the day we're all going to the water park. And so make sure you guys invite your friends. It'd be great for them to check out the church and see what it's all about. And also we have the whole water park to ourselves, so it'll be pretty sweet regardless. But so that for the next 2 weeks, we're not going to have normal Bible study. So I'll be posting these online. So take your book home. You can follow along and it'll be great. But I'm praying for you guys. I really hope you're having a great week. Be good for your leaders and enjoy the rest of the night. See you guys later.